what does compassion look like? What are the tactics of compassion as a landlord?
Yeah, absolutely. Let's talk about what JWB is really doing to kind of live out that message here. So I think, it starts with over communication with your residents. It starts with going outside of what you may already know, doing research and having relationships and connections with programs out there that can offer assistance for residents. So we're proactively reaching out and setting up residents with those types of relationships where possible, understanding how unemployment works, understanding how the federal stimulus package works, to be a resource to help guide those folks with specific information that could really affect their pocketbooks. One of the things that we've done that has had the most dramatic impact, and Pablo, you were on our team call earlier this morning, and you've heard this straight from Melissa, who runs our property management division. The fact that JWB proactively made the decision to waive all late fees and to proactively reach out to residents and talk about, for those who needed a flexible payment plan, that we were willing to work with them in their time of need right now, has gone over overwhelmingly positive for residents. And these are things that we did because we felt it was the right thing to do for coronavirus. And so when you have that sort of proactive thinking for the other type of person approach, what you're able to do is to be able, to collect more rent at the end of the day. Even though you are creating a situation that gives more flexibility, what we're finding is that we're able to collect more rent than we expected to be able to do during coronavirus time. And this positivity that we've built with residents should continue to help our clients for years and years and years as their residents stay longer. Prior to coronavirus time, our average resident stayed 49 months in our homes, right? And then when you have a negative event like this, to show compassion, it would stand to believe that the relationship that we have is getting even stronger with our residents. And that should show in coming years that our average tenant stay, our average resident stay would continue to hopefully be longer and longer than 49 months. So we've got kind of a 5-step approach. I'll give you the actual nitty gritty. What are we doing? So the first step, there's a large segment of our renting population, while they're affected with coronavirus, their ability to pay rent has not been compromised, at least in April. Right? So pulling the numbers prior to our call here, of the rent that we've collected, 80% of that has been paid in full. And a large percentage of that was paid, in the first few days of the month of April, which is normal for us, for JWB. So you've got a large segment of the population that has not been affected negatively. But what we do is we collect rent normally for those folks that are not negatively affected. And we proactively waived those fees as well as proactively connecting our residents with places that may help with their hardship if necessary. So that was like baseline. What did we do? For those residents that had hardships, that we then communicated our flexible payment options for them. And we worked very hard to make sure that their flexible payment plans can work with their budget and can be paid, the rent can be paid during the month of April, right? So rent is due April 1st. Very important for us to be able to work with those residents to have the rent collected in April so that we, of course, can deliver that to our clients and our owners. The large segment of the population for us fits into those two categories. In fact, over 90% of the rent that we've collected fits into those two categories, okay? Now, what do we do for the ones that don't fit into those categories? Well, our next approach is to work on payment plans that may extend a little bit farther beyond April. So April's rent is due April 1st. There is a segment of the population that we are serving as residents that will pay the full month of April in May, right? We have even extended that to June sometimes, depending on what is right for the resident, because we're looking at what their income is, we're looking at their job situation, we're looking at a number of other factors, and mutually we're putting a plan in place that serves them and serves our owners, because we're focusing on occupancy and compassion at this time. What do you do in a worst case scenario? What do you do with a resident that unfortunately right now cannot pay the April rent? This has only happened to one resident so far. That's the latest information that I have. We only have one of these plans out of 3,500 homes that we manage. But in this case where a resident cannot pay the rent in April, and we look at it, again, we're operating under the assumption that occupancy and compassion is the best thing for our owners. We'll do what's called a forbearance plan. We're going to work with that resident. We're going to collect the most that we can, while also putting them in a positive situation. That may be 75% of the rent that we collect for April. That may be 50% of the rent. It may be 25%. It may even be 0% of the rent for April. We may be willing to forego 1 month of rent for that resident. They have to show the hardship. They have to have documented evidence of the hardship. And we also need to know a significant amount of what their actual ability to pay is right now. So it's a communicative process. Not everybody just gets to go to this step. But when it's the right thing, that's what we're going to be willing to do. What we do in that case is we then add on additional months to the lease that resident would sign up for. So while they wouldn't be required to pay the April rent, we would forgive that. What we would do is add on either 1 or 2 months to the to the lease at the end. So now we do have additional months of rent coming in at the end, which would reduce vacancy and would be a small win for the owner. So that's our 5-step plan. No, 5 steps? 4 steps. That's our 4-step plan to handling these situations. We go from top 1, 2, if 2 doesn't work, 3, and if 3 doesn't work, then we go to 4.